All right, new day and time to save another laptop. So this time we have an Alienware M15R7, the Ryzen edition. This is a Ryzen 9 15-inch gaming laptop. And the customer sent it in. They said that does actually power on, but it never gets the Alienware screen, so it's not posting. So this does look like it's probably a bad motherboard of some sort. And we're gonna see if we can save this laptop from needing to replace the motherboard. So let's see if we can fix this together. I haven't looked at this yet. Let's figure it out together. All right, so the first thing we wanna do is we wanna see if it turns on. I don't have the power plugged in yet. We're just gonna see what it does on battery. So I press the power button. We are getting the keyboard light and we are getting an Alienware headlight, but I don't hear it doing anything. I don't hear the fans. I mean, it hasn't been on long enough, but it's just kind of sitting there doing nothing. Let's go ahead and plug in the charger and see if we can see what it's doing through the charge current. Okay, so we see it moving around a little bit, but it's at 2.26, and it is kind of staying at a constant current. What we want to see when a laptop's turning on is it should actually be ramping up and ramping down its current. Okay, we went to 4 amps, but that might be triggering on the battery charging. So it's just kind of like 2 amps on top of whatever we had. So now we're at 4.2. So again, what we want to see is it moving around. We want it to see it dipping and going up, going down, like it's doing something. At this point, it's kind of just turning on and just being dead. You know, most likely what we are witnessing here is a corrupted BIOS. And so that's something that is easily fixed for the most part. So we'll see if we can actually get this one fixed. But let's open it up. We'll start with doing a CMOS reset, which is when we unplug the main battery, unplug the CMOS battery, which these don't have one, and then unplug the power from the system. And we'll hold down the power button, discharge all the capacitors, and then we'll see if we can get the system kind of reset itself. If that doesn't work, then we'll have to do a manual rewrite the laptop BIOS. So let's get the bottom opened up. All right, and the bottom is off. Let's take a quick look around. We have the main battery here. It is a Dell OEM. You can see the serial number here. We've got a couple sticks of memory. Here's the fans. So we're just gonna do a quick CMOS reset. So we'll just unplug the main battery, and then I'm going to hold down the power button for about 10 seconds or so. And then we'll plug the power back in. A lot of times on these gaming laptops, the CMOS reset doesn't do anything because the EC chip is actually hard written, and a lot of times when you do a CMOS reset, it's just kind of reprogramming the EC chip. But we're gonna go ahead and see what it does here. So we press the power. I don't have the battery plugged in, so it shouldn't jump up to 4 amps. So we're just sitting there at the 2.2, and it's just sitting there at 2.2. We should see it move around a little bit more than that. Yeah, so this is definitely a candidate for rewriting the BIOS. But what I want to try, we're going to try the official way from Dell. So Dell has a BIOS recovery option built into these laptops. I've actually never got it to work properly, so I want to attempt it on this one. So let's see if we can do it. So what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to download a special recovery file from Dell's website. You'll put it on a flash drive as the only file. It's named something special. And then we're going to hold down the Control and Escape key. So I'm holding those down. We're gonna plug in the power while I'm still holding those down. And then on most laptops, it will just come on by itself. But on an Alienware, you still have to hold that down. You have to hit power. And I don't have the flash drive in there right now because what I'm gonna look for is I wanna see if we get our error code saying that it doesn't see that we're missing the BIOS recovery file. And you see our power is different now? You see how it's moving around a little different? So that is interesting. It is doing something a little different. Now we got 1 amp, 94. So it's actually in a different boot phase than it was when we just turned it on a second ago. So that's a good thing. So we know that it is responding to our Control Escape command. Now what we want to look for is that this Alienware head gives us, I think, a 3.3 error. And if it gives us a 3.3, it means it can't find that BIOS flash file. So let's just see, we'll just wait for a second and see if we get that error. And if we are getting an error, then we'll go ahead and put a BIOS flash file in there on the drive. Yeah, but you can see it moving around a little different than it was a second ago, right? So it is doing something different for sure. All right, we've let it sit here for a little while. We still have not got the error code saying that it can't find the BIOS flash file because we don't have this USB in there. We're trying to get it to respond to different things. Let me turn it off again. I want to try a couple more things before we start going straight to doing a BIOS flash, because I don't want to waste our time. We may be off base on that, and I'm kind of jumping straight to it because I've done a lot of these systems over the years, and I'm seeing a lot more of these failed BIOSes, and a lot of times it does jump up to like 2.2 amps. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a display test. This isn't going to tell us too much, but it will tell us if it's responding to that. I'm going to hold down D. I'm going to hit the power button. We should get the screen to come on. And we're not getting the display test to trigger, but we are getting the amps to move around again. So that's interesting. Let me unplug this. I'm going to plug it back in. I'm going to turn it on cold again. I'm not going to hold any keys down. See if we get it to go right back to that 2.2 and just sit there. Or is it moving around? Hey, it's moving around again. So And I can hear the fans ramping up and ramping back down over and over again. Very mild, not super loud, but okay, interesting. I'm not 100% sure what we got going on. We probably have a bad BIOS file still, but let's try the usual things first. I'm going to reseat the memory, things like that, because we do have modular memory sticks. So have the battery still unplugged. I'm just going to take out one of the sticks, and then we will move this one to this other slot. Could have a bad stick of memory. Turn it back on. Okay, now we're back at sitting at that 2.2. So I'm wondering if we had triggered it into BIOS recovery mode, and so it kept trying to look for those BIOS files every single time until we did the CMOS reset again. I bet that's what we did. But I'm going to move that memory, the other memory stick, into the other slot real quick, just for kicks, and that way we at least did all that. So now we take this stick, we'll take this one out, and we're going to put this one in this slot, and that way we had every combination. Turn it back on. Back to that 2.2. All right. I know in the long run, it would be easier for me just to pull this board and write the BIOS myself, but we're going to go ahead and suffer through this Dell BIOS recovery and see if it works, because I'm interested to know if it works. So I'll take my flash drive. Let's go to Dell site real quick. All right, we're going to go to M15R7 AMD, downloads, drivers, and then we're going to choose the BIOS. Now we're going to do this down arrow, and then normal is going to be an exe file, but we're not going to be, that's if you want to run it in Windows. We're going to run it in other format. We need this RCV file, 34 megs. We'll download that. And actually I already had one in here. They name them this bios.image, and so then now it gave it this extra little character. I need to rename that because it needs to be that. Okay, so that's fixed. Let me put my flash drive in, we'll copy it over. All right, let me clear off that drive. Okay, so here's the one we just downloaded from Dell. I'm gonna put that on my flash drive. So now that's the only thing we have on there, and we'll see if it actually works. So let me plug this USB drive into the back. All right, so I need to hold the control and escape. I'll plug in the power, and then I'm gonna hit the power button. And we can watch it boot a little differently, right? Because it's moving around. Yep, 94, it didn't go straight to that 2.2. And I wanna see if it does anything. Oh, okay, so it's blinking at us now. What is it? What we got? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's look up where the 3, 4 is. Okay, what do we say? 3, 4. Recovery image found but invalid. Okay, so it doesn't like the recovery image. So it did find it. So we're on the right track. Okay, perfect. So let's see if we can fix that recovery image. Let's see if we can get the right one on there. Because I had multiple in there and I renamed it, let me just delete what we have in here right now. We'll download it again. Okay, it downloaded correctly. It's named correctly. Let me format this drive actually. Format FAT32. Okay, perfect. So now we'll copy that onto that drive, and hopefully it will like what it sees. And we'll eject it safely so we don't have to worry about that being an issue. Eject it safely. Okay, so I'm going to turn it off again. I have the flash drive plugged back in. I'm going to plug in the power while I'm holding control and escape. And then I'm going to hit the power button. So let's see what it does. Current at 2.1. Okay, we got a flashing light again. It's still giving me a 3, 4. So it doesn't like the image that we're putting on there. Let me make sure that this is the right model because I'm just going by what the customer said. So here's their service tag. Let me run their service tag instead. I'll be right back. Ah, this is the M15R5. The customer had put it down as an R7. They look about the same. So now we need to download the R5 BIOS. So again, let me delete this one out of here. All right, so BIOS, download, other versions. This one's only 18 megs. It's good to know that it has a safety measure in there. We'll get rid of this one. And then we'll move this one into our flash drive. Okay, we got that one back on there. Let's try this again. Flash drive plugged in. Hold control escape. Plug it in. Hit the power button with the control escape held down. It's powering on. 210, 206, 199, 212. This light, we haven't got the error code yet. It'd be nice if it actually gives us some sort of user input, if it blinks when it's like actually programming. We don't know if it's doing anything, it's just sitting at that 2.2, which is exactly what we saw before. And it's not blinking or showing me that it's actually writing. It'd be nice if it was like doing some sort of blink here or something. And it seems like the fans would go on full blast too if it was actually programming it. I hear the fans blowing a little bit, but normally they put them on full blast when it's actually programming the BIOS. So let me turn this back off again and we'll reset. So unplug this, let me discharge everything. Okay, I'm holding Control Escape, we'll plug it back in one more time. Hit the power button. 2.2, it's interesting, it keeps going back up to that. So, all right, well, we'll let it sit here for a little while and I'll come back. All right, so the laptop turned off on its own. So I'm assuming that it finished writing everything, so let's turn it back on and see if it turns on. All right, we got some power, moving around a little bit. 2.2, 2.16, 2.2, going right back to where that current was. So did it actually write the BIOS on there? I don't know. We're gonna let it sit here for a second. All right, looks like it's doing the same thing after that. And I just don't feel confident that it actually wrote the BIOS on there the way that I wanted to do it. It's just easier in the long run. I keep oh, it moved around some more. I just saw it jump up to 2.6. We're still letting it sit here. Maybe it's still going through like a boot up process because now we're at 2.3 and it just jumped to 2.6. Did you see that? And then it turned off. Hey, we might be good. No, I don't see it turning back on its own. You know, one thing I didn't do is I actually have the main battery unplugged, and maybe it doesn't want to write that BIOS recovery file with the battery unplugged, so we'll try that. Seems like it would give me an error code or something. I mean, I wish it had some sort of user input. If it's giving me user input to tell me that the file's wrong or that I can't find it, then it seems like it would tell me that it's actually writing or something like that. So let me turn this back off. We'll plug in the main battery, and then we'll see if we can write the BIOS again one more time. I'm going to hold down the Control Escape. And it turned on by itself this time, which I think is kind of strange. These things normally won't do that. Let's see if we get user input. Showing it's charging, that's why we're up to 4 amps instead of the 2.2. It's charging the battery at 2.1 amps. So I'm gonna let this sit for a little while and I'll be right back. All right, I've kind of given up on doing the BIOS recovery using Dell's version. So I'm gonna pull the motherboard out and let's go ahead and write a new BIOS to it manually using a chip reader. All right, so the first thing I gotta do is pull this motherboard out. Let's do that now. Okay, this is not put on here correctly. This whole piece right here, the cables are actually supposed to go on top of this, and they have this on top. We have this metal foil tape on top of the cables, so this was put on hindsight. So somebody has worked on this a bunch. I'm suspecting this motherboard's been taken out. This cable just came unplugged. I don't know, we might have a different issue than a BIOS issue. I thought that this was just a working machine that stopped working one day, but without getting the whole story, it sometimes throws you off a little bit. So we could be off base, but this is a very easy thing to do and it doesn't take very long, and I usually will opt to do this because it's quick. And if this doesn't work, then we know it's a different issue. All right, so now we have the board out, and you can see here's the BIOS chip. Here's the BIOS chip right here. It's a 128, and these are actually very easy to write to because this is the AMD version. Is that moisture? What is that? It might just be sticky. But what I was saying was, so these are very easy to write to. So when you have the AMD Ryzen edition, we can actually take the BIOS recovery file from Dell. We use an extractor and it will pull a BIOS portion off of that. And we can actually write that straight to the chip. We don't need to do any injection. I'll back up their contents just in case anyway, but we should be able to just write straight to the chip and it'll turn right on. The EC chips here, I'm not sure if this one is an auto-programmed one or not. The board is turning on, but there's a chance that that still is not working right, so we might need to program that EC if it's not an auto-programmable one, but I think it is. So let's extract the contents off of this, and then we will write a new BIOS to it. So we will need a chip reader. That's a 5x6 chip. I'm just gonna use a pogo pen reader. You could probably use a chip clip on one of these, but I always have a bad experience with those, so I stopped using them a while back. So the ones I use, this one for the 5x6s, and they wear out very quickly, so I always buy like a pack of these. I have pen 1 I just mark right here, and then that dot's pen 1, so I'm just gonna hold it on here like this. See if I can get it in the right spot. Actually, you know, I have this other reader. Let's see if this one will fit. This is another 5x6 that I have that has an actual holder. I think this one might work on this one fine too. Okay, so there's my pen 1. I'm just gonna line it up like that. All right, now let's get into the software. All right, so here's my chip reading software. Let's see if we can get it to detect. I'm going to have to hold it down a certain angle and make sure I put enough pressure on it. These things are a pain to detect sometimes. Okay, I'm going to go back to that other pogo pen reader because this one doesn't seem to be doing anything. We'll use this 6x8 because we can actually use the outer pins on it. Pen 1, Yeah, and I can put it on the outer pads and that works. Okay. All right, so all the pins are touching. Still not detecting. So I've had this happen sometimes. We're just gonna skip the ID check and see if we can read it, and we can read it. It just, for some reason, it's not being able to detect it using the ID because it's trying to figure out what chip it is. All right, so it just read it as all Fs. Let's see if we can select the right chip. This is a 25LR128. Okay, unfortunately, I think we're actually gonna have to take this chip off. We're not having success reading it, and that means we have to take it off and put it into a chip reader, and then that should work. Sometimes you have to do it. 9 times out of 10, I can just read it. All right, I'm just gonna add some leaded solder to these pins real quick. A little flux, and then I'll add some leaded solder to these pins. I'll just make it melt a little easier. All right, we got the chip off of there. So here's the chip we pulled off, and we're gonna put it into a little reader. All right, we're gonna put it into this little device. You squeeze it down and it holds the pins in place. Trying to find pin 1. Get pin 1 in this top corner. We'll put pin 1 in that top corner right there. Squeeze it down, put it in here. If I can't read it on the board, this usually always works. But this chip could be bad or something. All right, there we go. So held in place now. Now we'll put it on the reader. All right, so I just installed this into the reader, and now let's see if we can read this. Or see if we can detect which chip it is. Still not detecting. Let me reboot the app here. Detect, it's not detecting. We could have a bad BIOS chip here, but I mean, although it was working, I guess it partially works because I'm just having a hard time reading it. Let me see if I can read it with, okay, bad pins, retry. Pay attention to the alignment. So pin 1, it's saying it doesn't work. Okay, so let me pull the chip out. Sometimes there's a little solder left on here. We'll clean that up. Yeah, we really don't want any solder piled up on these because we want it to be an even surface. All right, let's try it again. Detect. Hey, detected. Okay, so it was an LR, but we don't have an LR as an option. And then we have a couple 1.8 volt options. And so this may be a 1.8 volt chip, and that's why sometimes I have a hard time reading it when it's on the board. Let's look up what that chip number does real quick. Yeah, I just looked it up, and it looks like it is a 1.8 volt chip, a 25LR128D, and it is showing up as a 1.8 volt chip. So most chips that I read are going to be 3.3, and I think it had a hard time detecting it because it's 1.8. We don't have that in our list, but we'll be able to choose something that's close, and so we can choose, this one has a D at the end, it's just LQ instead of LR, so that one should work. Let's select that, let's read it. And it's having pin detection issues. Okay, let's try it again, let's read it. So it's reading just fine. Okay, let's verify the contents up. So there's a lot of blank stuff in here. I'm gonna verify it though. We wanna make sure that it matches. Yeah, so this may be the issue. There's a lot of missing space here. Usually there's something in here. So we're gonna back this up and then we'll flash over a fresh BIOS region. Let me save this real quick. All right, I got the customers backed up. Now let's go ahead and write a new one on there. I believe I do have a new one I can put on there. R5, M15R5, this file right here. So the original is 16.387, and this one's 16.384, but this is what I've extracted out of a rescue or a recovery file from Dell, and so we'll go ahead and write that one back to it. and it's for an M15 R5. Okay, now it's writing the actual information. First it erased it. All right, it's verifying the flash, making sure that what it wrote in there was correct. Everything succeeded. I like to do one more verify at the end. So what we're doing is pulling the information off of the chip one more time, and then I'm verifying it with if it's the same thing that's in the buffer here. And let's look at what's in the buffer. We do have a lot of F's at the starting, just like the original, and then we have all this other stuff. So it may not be as corrupted as I thought, but hopefully this will fix the issue. Let's go ahead and get this chip soldered back on to the motherboard. Okay, so we have pin 1 right here, this line, and this is going to be pin 1 with the dot. We'll just line that up, and we will solder it back on real quick. All right, the chip is reinstalled. See if we can clean up the area a little bit. Okay, let's reinstall this motherboard in and see if it fixed the issue. All right, the motherboard is installed, and moment of truth. What do you think? Do you think that it's just a bad BIOS, or do you think we have something else going on? Because this will confirm it right off the bat. So let's keep an eye on the current, see if we got something different. It turned on by itself when I opened the lid. Okay, so this is after a fresh BIOS being written on here. Remember that would jump up to 2.22, and it would just kind of sit there. We have it moving around, which is looking good so far. We're up to 2.2 again, but it's still moving around. This is exactly what we want. So it's going through a bunch of startup phases. So it's checking the screen, it's going to check the memory, it's going to check the CPU, it's going to check the GPU. Look, we're up to 3 amps. I don't know if we saw that before at all. So I would suspect that we should be hitting a Alienware screen any moment now. The power light just flicked on for a second. We don't have the battery plugged in. This is just the system board running. So we're sitting at a higher amount than we were before. We were sitting at 2.2 without the battery plugged in. So I'm still optimistic at this point. We're going to give it a little more time. Okay, now that I've let it sit for a little while and it still hasn't turned on, I'm going to power it off now, because sometimes it needs to be powered off after it goes through that reset phase. I'm going to hold down the power button, and let's turn it back on and see what happens. 2.87, 2.2, 2.36, 3.5. Okay, I like that. 2.5. Okay, it's just sitting at this 2.55 again. So before it was sitting at a little less. And you know what I'm seeing here? Check this out. Right there. Do you see something? Caps lock's working. So the reason why we're getting a different reading here is because the laptop's running. The screen's not on though. So let's check the LCD connection real quick. All right, so this is good news though. So I mean, at least we know the laptop looks like it's running. If the caps lock is responding, that means that we're just not getting a display. But we weren't getting the caps lock before. We were sitting at 2.2. Nothing would happen whenever you press that caps lock. I tested that. So the laptop wasn't running and just wasn't getting a display. So at this point, I'm gonna look here. Let's look at the connector close up. I do have it plugged in all the way, but I just wanna see if we see anything, because if people have been in here tearing stuff apart, that did just come out pretty easily though. I see something. The connector's kind of ripped. See that? So this connector will need to be replaced, maybe, or we might be able to just kind of bend back the top here. Like all these pins are fine. There's nothing ripped here on these pins. These are all attached, but these wings, you know, even if I replace the connector, I can't replace these wings here. But the fact that this came out so easily, it's very loose. Let me plug it in again. I don't have any power in the system, so we don't have to worry about that. So yeah, it just really comes out easy. Oh. Let's see if we can look down into the connector. Okay, yeah, you can see that this whole part is lifted up. It's not applying good pressure against these pins. And so really the top of the ribbon cable is supposed to touch all these pins here, and if we don't have enough pressure, then we'll have an issue. Let's just experiment with maybe kind of bending this down just a little bit. I'm just gonna slide this across here. So let's see if that works. Let's see how that feels plugging this in now. It's a little tighter. Let's try it out. All right, let's turn it back on. So what we're looking for again is getting back that 2.55 amps. That means that it's actually running probably on a screen that is telling me that I have an underwatt charger. I bet it's all white. But hopefully we'll get the Alienware screen ahead of time. But we do know the thing's posting for sure now. 2.26, 3-1, see that went up. So that was the stage where it kept stopping. And so now we're past that, so we still don't have a screen though. You know, we could try a new LCD screen, but that connector definitely seemed like it's mangled. I could also check the fuses around there and see if they blew out a fuse. But the caps lock is running here. See if I apply a little bit of pressure. It doesn't seem like it's not connecting enough for it to work, so we may have a different issue on the motherboard now. Let's check the fuses real quick. So we're in continuity mode. Let's see if we can find the fuses. So what you're looking for is FV. Well, these are the two fuses that I can see right here. There's one here. That one's fine. Here's another one. There's two markers for one. There may be another one right there, but because this is the FV for this one, and then these two are for these two, but there's only one there. So we don't have an issue there. We're not getting an LCD not detected error, so that's why I would think it would be more of a backlight issue, but then you would see a faint image, and we're not seeing that either. I guess we should have to hook it to an external monitor. Let me do that real quick. All right, I'm trying to figure out exactly if the screen's not working or not. I tested it on an external monitor. I couldn't get anything to come up. But here's something interesting. So, you know, we're pretty sure it's running. We have the caps lock working. So you see 2.68. If I hit enter, it jumps down, and it looks like it's rebooting after that. And then this turns off. We got 2 red, and then 7 blue, which is a 2.7 is a bad LCD screen or bad LCD connected screen. So definitely that connector is messed up. We physically can see it's messed up. The screen's not showing any signs of life. I'm gonna go ahead and grab a test machine. We'll plug in a test screen real quick just to rule that out, and then we'll replace that LCD connector. I do have more of those, so let's do that now. All right, here's our test machine. We have one of every single Dell laptop model that's ever been made, every Alienware and every Latitude, XPS, because we sell all the parts, and so we buy every single laptop that Dell ever produces. So we do have a test machine, and I can hook the screen up to it. So let's do that and test it. All right, so I just took the screen off our test machine, and I'm just gonna connect it. We are probably gonna have to replace this connector, but I wanna just test this out. All right, keep an eye on this test screen right here. All right, so we did get a display on our test screen, so we know that it's actually posting on that screen. Now, we don't know for sure. I know that that connector is pretty flaky, but it did look like it was making contact. But this does verify a few different things. So let's talk about that. So by testing with our test screen, we confirmed that all the fuses work, that the VDD on the LCD is working. It was getting a 2.7 error, which means it wasn't able to detect the LCD screen, which is usually on the VDD circuit. So that is actually being detected fine with this one. I'm kind of suspecting that, you know, this laptop had a bad BIOS. So somebody had worked on it, took it apart a few times, and probably ended up damaging the LCD connector or cable or something like that, you know, while they're working on it. So it's either their LCD cable's bad or their screen's bad. I think I have these full assemblies. I can just sell them one of those and we can bolt that on there. Because they didn't have to replace the motherboard, that's saving them a lot of money. And so we'll probably end up having to do that. Let's see if we do have those LCDs in stock. This is an Alienware M15R5. It's an Alienware M15R5. So here's the, oh, it's right here. That's gonna be, it's the M15 Ryzen Edition R5. That's what they call it. It's a little bit different. So this is gonna be the model they have. And then let's see, LCD screens, 360 hertz panel, which I think that's what they have. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and see about changing that out. We can also, I bet we have cables too. Yeah, so here's the LCD cable. So if it is a bad cable, we'll be able to change that out. So good news, we did get this laptop fixed up, and I'll replace the screen, and we'll get all that stuff working. I'll talk to them about the LCD connector, but if the LCD connector is working, I don't think changing it out is gonna change anything, because those little mounts are not gonna be mounted any better, because there's nothing to solder to if it's been ripped like that. All the pins look like they're intact, and it is making connection with this test screen. So all right, I messed with their connector just a little bit more, and I was able to bend the connectors down and give it a little more contact. And when I reseated it, I'm actually getting the screen to work now. So, so the screen's fine, the cable's fine. It was just, it wasn't getting a good enough connection, and for some reason our test screen was able to plug in properly. So that's perfect. So I'll make sure it's secure. I'll talk to the customer, let them know that that is a little bit floppy. If they want me to change that out, I can do that. But at this point, I'm not recommending it. It's not going to help that much if I can get this to connect. This was an interesting one because, you know, it was damaged. The BIOS failed, but we couldn't use the Dell's BIOS recovery option. We weren't able to get it working that way. And so I always ended up having to revert back to just doing it the way that I've always done it, pull the board out, read it, and it always tends to be faster, even if I have to pull the chip off. So, and I've been a little bit under the weather. My voice is a little messed up right now. So anyway, I appreciate everybody's comments, and I'd love to hear anything you have on this one, and thanks for watching.
I saved another laptop!